Hi, I'm Kitty, and this is how you sew the buffalo. So, firstly, in your kit, you get a 6-inch embroidery hoop, a needle threader, a sampler, and this is going to teach you how to do all of the 6 stitches that you need to complete this piece. And they're the same 6 stitches for every piece. This is what it looks like completed. So the 6 stitches are backstitch, whipped backstitch, chain stitch, lazy daisy stitch, satin stitch, and French knots. There's a separate video on that. So if you don't know how to do any of these stitches, go back and watch that. It also takes you through how to thread your needle, how to use the needle threader, how to tie a knot, how to put the fabric in the hoop. It shows all of that. There's also 2 needles, one big and one small. There is a cheat sheet. So this has the design on one side with all written instructions of how to do each step. So you don't have to keep going back and watching this video. It also has substitutions here, so if there are any stitches that you find tricky, you can substitute them here. And on the back, there's just a couple of helpful tips here, a link to this video, and a key. So your skeins of thread, which you have here, will all correspond to colours on the key. You also have a skein of thread called tester. This is to do your sampler with. Remember not to do the sampler with any of these ones, otherwise you probably won't have enough thread. You have your design, which is printed on this washed Irish linen. It's digitally printed, so the designs are really clear. You also will need some scissors, just any scissors will do, obviously. And this is really optional, but for this video I am going to be using a embroidery stand. Actually, when I'm just embroidering on my own, I don't like to use one of these because I like to be able to have my piece in my hands and be able to sort of turn it every which way. But some people do prefer to use these. They're really cheap to buy. You can kind of secure your fabric in this, and then you have both hands free, basically. So up to you. So before you start, you're going to need to secure your fabric in your hoop. I'm using a bigger hoop for this video just because it's easier to show lots of different things, but yours is just a small version of this. So there are 2 bits to the hoop, one with no metal thing, one with the metal thing. So you put the one with no metal thing underneath, one with the metal thing on top, like that, and then you tighten this to secure it. You want it to be quite tight, like that. So that's the first thing you do. So each thread you get comes in strands of 6, these little 6 guys here, and you need to separate that out into strands of 3. So you want to cut maybe like a 40-50 centimetre bit of string. Cut that. And then I'm sure there are more professional ways of doing this and everyone has their own way, but I literally just tap it like that until I can see 3 and 3 and then really gently pull it apart. The key is to be gentle here. If you're too aggressive, it will just come in a knot. And that's quite a good lesson actually for any time you get a knot, is just be really gentle. If you pull it really hard, the knot will just get worse. That's maybe a life lesson as well. So then you need to make a knot at one end of your thread. The way I do it is secure my thread here, wrap it around once, and then pull it down my finger and pull it like that. But you can also just make a normal double knot. Then you want to thread your needle. Again, more instructions on that in the other video, in the sampler video. There we go. So now you're ready to go. So there is no right place to start with these. You can start anywhere you want really, it's not going to make a difference. But personally I like to start in the middle and then work my way out so that I'm doing the border last, because then you can kind of count how many little things you've got to go, and it feels like the end is in sight. So I'm going to start with Satin Stitch, which you can see makes the triangles here. It makes these droplets here, the tail. It's got one of the easiest stitches to do. It's kind of like just literally like colouring in basically. Starting with these triangles. So you've got your threaded needle here and you want to come up here in the middle of the triangle, come all the way up and then up to the point. Remember, these black lines don't wash out, we print them digitally like some other embroidery kits, the design washes out. So you always want to, when you're doing a satin stitch, go over the black lines instead of inside them, otherwise you'll be able to see them. So basically you just want to keep going, following the triangle. A tip for when you're doing satin stitch, for sort of pointy shapes like a triangle, is to not go from the smallest point first. So to not go from these edges, to go from the middle and work your way out. Otherwise you have to start with a really tiny stitch, and that's just a bit of a bore. These triangles are probably the most time-consuming part of the piece, but it's quite mindless really once you've nailed how to do the triangle. You can really zone out. And if you make a bit of a mistake, it literally doesn't matter at all, because no one will see it in the finished piece. It might look serious, but you won't be able to see it at all. There we go, so there are 4 triangles. Obviously there are more to do. And it just goes blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, all the way up. So that is satin stitch. As I said, you also use this for the tail, coming down here, just the same looping filling stitch. You use it for these orange drops here, and I think that is it actually. The other thing I'll show you quickly, which again is explained in more detail in the other video, is how to finish your thread. So say you've come to the end of your thread, or you've come to the end of the bit that you're doing. You want to turn over your piece and just literally do 1 or 2 small stitches at the back, sort of over and over each other to make a knot, like that, and then just cut very close to the fabric, like this. If you cut really far away from the fabric, you'll end up with long sort of dangling threads coming off it, which will make you have knots. The next stitch I'm going to show you is Backstitch. So this is really the most basic stitch. Probably some of you will know how to do it. It's this one here that I'd use for the border. It's just like a running stitch basically. So I use it for the border, for the lettering, for the insides of the legs here, and then these blue sort of droplets here, pink insides of these border bits, for the eyes, oh, and for the inside of the body, the inside blue lines of the body. The outside is a different stitch, but the inside is Backstitch. So I'll show you how to do these blue inside stripes here. Even though there's not really a correct order to do the bits in, I would say do the triangles before you do the blue outline, because then if you make any mistakes with the triangles, you just can go over it in the blue outline. So find your line you're going to do. Remember, it's not the very outer outline of the buffalo, it's just these middle lines here. So you just come up at the end of the line, and then about a sort of 3mm, 4mm stitch, is that right? And just pull, and then up again like that. Oh, so if what's happened here happens to you at any point, which is that another little bit of thread has been pulled through the hole, just very gently turn it over and tease it apart with the needle like that. So, and then you just go back down and you just keep going. And there you go, that is how you do a backstitch line. I will quickly also show you how to do the writing, which is also backstitch. People seem sometimes to be a bit intimidated by doing the writing, but it's just super easy. Basically, you just want to do this by thinking that every time that there's a straight line, it's just one stitch, and then the curved ones like this B, you just basically go around the shape using as few stitches as you can. You just don't need to do loads of tiny little stitches. And even if the letters look a little bit wonky on their own, in the end people will still be able to read it. And I think it makes it more charming anyway. There we are, and there's your first word. It's really just as simple as that. The next stitch I'm going to show you is the whipped backstitch, which is basically like a stronger, more bold version of the backstitch, and you can either use it with one colour or with two colours, and there are examples of both of those in this piece. So with one colour you can see it's the outline of the head or the eyebrows, these legs here, or the hooves, and it just creates this really bold, strong line. Or you can use it with two colours, like the mane or like the outside of these circles, which creates this stripy effect. But it's exactly the same technique. I'll show you how to do both the one colour and the two colour versions. So with the one colour version, I'll show you the outline of this guy. So you just want to start basically with a backstitch, exactly the same as you did before. So I'll just do that now. Maybe I actually won't even show you because that was boring. So there is a line of backstitch that I just did. And then what you want to do is bring your needle up to the edge of the line, doesn't matter which side, this side or this side. Bring it up through the end of the line, and then what you want to do is sort of wrap your thread through the stitches like this. So you never go on the underside of the fabric, you always just stay on top, and you just twist it round basically, or whip it as it's called in the biz. So you can see it now, going back over it creates this really, really bold line. If you're doing a whip backstitch nearby to some other pattern that you've got, like here, just be really careful to not get your needle trapped in this and then pull up, because then you'll have to unpick it. Just go really carefully. But that's it. The main thing to remember with whips backstitch is always just go from the same side, so either up, down to up, or or up to down. So I'm doing down to up, like this. So just be really careful there. And then pull it through. And that's it. So when you've got a whipped backstitch, like the main that has two different colours, instead of just one colour, what you want to do is just pick one of the colours, it doesn't matter which. Start with your backstitch. And then you go in with your second colour and start at the end of the line and just twist it through like this. Oh, let me just move this around. So the next stitch I'm going to show you is the chain stitch, which is actually only used here on the horns. If you are not comfortable with this, or you just don't really like the stitch, just substitute it for single line whipped backstitch, just like we did in the last segment. It will still be really effective. So, but if you do want to use chain stitch, then this is how. So start at the end of your line, come up like that and pull all the way through. Then you want to keep this sort of either in hand or at least in sight. Put your needle down through the hole that you came up through, pull it down halfway and then come up about 3 millimeters up, so you're bringing it through the inside of the loop and then pull. So that's your first little chain. Then you want to just do the same thing, so needle down through the hole that you came up in, keep this here and pull through. The key to success when you're doing chain stitch is just to go really slow and be really careful. So there's your first line of chain stitch. What you want to do now is finish your thread off and start again here. Finish that off, start again here, so that the chains are all going in the same direction up to a point. Otherwise you're not going to get that very pointy bit at the end. Next thing I'll show you is the lazy daisy stitch, which is basically like the chain stitch, except it's just singular little stitches. So it's used here for this pattern in the legs and for the little inside bits of these border circles. I've given you guidelines here, these little black lines coming out here. You want to start at the bottom like this, pull all the way up, keep this sort of in sight, back down through here, pull almost all the way through and then up, just like a chain stitch. But then instead of going on, all you do is you just make a little stitch like that and finish it off. So there's your first stitch, and then you just go round. So up to the end point of the line, down and up like that, and finish with a small stitch like that. The last stitch I'm going to show you is French knots, which are these little guys here in the middle of the eyes and the white dots around here. So these are definitely for sure the hardest stitches on the piece. Some people really just can't get their head around them. If you're really struggling with them, a tip actually is to get an embroidery stand, because then you can use both hands. It's much easier if you can use both hands as opposed to doing it just with a hoop on your lap. If you're not confident with these, then you can just substitute them for small single back stitches and it will look the same. So if you just make a little back stitch here, it will just look basically exactly the same. And in fact, if you're making your piece into a cushion or something that's going to be sort of handled quite regularly and you're not 100% confident with these, I would recommend substituting them, because if they're not super tight, they will come unraveled quite easily and then they're very hard to redo. But if you want to have a go, then this is how to do it. So I haven't put any marks on where the French knots should be, because they're such tiny dots that they actually don't show up on the fabric, or they show up too dark and the French knot won't go over them. So you just need to look at your picture or a picture on the website of where the dots go, but it's pretty self-explanatory. So for example, here you just start here, the dots sort of go around this shape, maybe 1 centimetre apart. So you pull the needle through, you get your needle like this and hold this tight. Wrap this around your needle once, only once, and then the trick to French knots is to not go back through the hole, the exact hole that you came up, to go a tiny little bit to the left or the right, pulling this tight and then pull like that. So up maybe 1 centimetre up from that, hold this, turn, not through the exact same hole, just a little bit to the left or right, hold this tight and then pull. You want the knots to be really sort of flush against the fabric, otherwise they'll come unraveled, and the trick to that is holding this thread tight as you pull it down. I don't know if I'm explaining this too well. I couldn't do French knots for years, and then I watched a handy YouTube vid. So round, hold tight, pull. They're quite satisfying when you figure out how to do them, but and don't pull too hard as well when you're coming down here. Just sort of gently make it go through, otherwise the knot will go back through the fabric. So that is how you sew the buffalo. When you're finished, you could buy a frame and a framing kit from us, so it can look like this. You can put it on your wall, you could do whatever you want with it. If you've got any questions, then do just message us and we'll help you. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it.